My name is Liska, and I speak to you today as a white settler woman from the traditional lands and place of the Dane-zaa peoples in Treaty 8 territory in northern British Columbia. I am an early childhood educator and instructor. I'd like to warmly welcome you as a future early childhood educator to the project of early childhood education. I refer to the profession that you're entering not as childcare or as early years care, but as a project of early childhood education, which is part of the larger project of education that includes public schools, colleges, and universities. I use the word project to emphasize that what happens in early childhood classrooms is deeply rooted in the larger community's histories, knowledges, cultures, and values. Education aims to impart the knowledges, cultures, and values that a community hopes to flourish. For example, in British Columbia, the vision of the British Columbia Early Learning Framework is to create spaces where diversity and difference can flourish as children learn to live and learn well together. The British Columbia Early Learning Framework is asking educators to create equitable, just, and livable worlds with children. While this sounds lovely, it's a highly political vision, as are all educational projects. In this case, the vision is to create a curriculum that allows particular values to flourish and hopefully will create a more equitable world for all. In Canada, all educational programs, including early childhood education, hold within them the knowledges and legacies of residential schools. The goal of the residential schools was to assimilate Indigenous peoples into a settler world. The educational program was an attempt to enact cultural, linguistic, knowledge, and spiritual genocide. In 1996, the Gordon Head Reserve Indian Residential School in Saskatchewan was the last residential school in Canada to close. Yet assimilation and the desire for children to be ready for school in ways that are inspired by white middle-class values lingers on today. When we practice as educators in ways that maintain the dominant Euro-white ways of being in the world, we support colonization's legacies. The Canadian government created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2007 to make visible the horrific truths surrounding residential schools and to facilitate reconciliation among former students, their families, their communities, and all people in Canada. The Commission published 94 calls to action for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to come together in a concentrated effort to help repair the harm caused by residential schools and to move forward with reconciliation. There are 11 calls to action which speak directly to education. If you're not yet familiar with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action, we encourage you to spend some time reading the report, the calls to action themselves, and familiarizing yourself with all of the resources that are available to learn more about residential schools and the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism in Canada. I'd like to share a brief story with you that is connected to place and my context here as a white settler, early childhood educator, and instructor. A few years ago in my role as instructor, I was visiting an early childhood education program and was approached by a couple of the educators who were seeking some guidance on how to remove a child from the program. The child was Indigenous to the place and community and had been given an ultimatum to either undergo a developmental assessment or be removed from the program. We know that developmental assessments are often created in very colonial ways, in white ways of knowing in the world. This is the legacy of colonization and assimilation that lingers today. The child ultimately was removed from the program, and I did stay in contact with the family over the years. During one of our visits, the child had said to me, "I used to play in this space." And I couldn't help but think about all of the children across Canada and Turtle Island that had to endure residential schools and these legacies of colonization. The program recently closed and the space was remodeled for another use. And last year we raised a teepee in the old playground. And for me, this was an act of reconciliation and of honoring those in this place. In conclusion, I would like to share with you the words from the Honorable Murray Sinclair, an Ojibwe lawyer, Associate Chief Judge in Manitoba, former Canadian Senator, and the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Education is what got us into this mess, and education will get us out. Speaking on behalf of the Post-Secondary Institutions Collective, it is my sincere hope that you take seriously your obligations to the calls to action as an early childhood education student. Inspired by our professional association, the Early Childhood Educators of British Columbia's position paper, I want to leave you with 2 questions to think with as you embark on your journey. How will you become an early childhood educator with a commitment to disrupt the legacy of colonization? As a future educator, how will you seek to recognize and disrupt the everyday, unquestioned practices of early childhood education that perpetuate the legacies of colonization? Thank you. I wish you all the best as you embark on becoming an early childhood educator.